Welcome, everyone. I'm Molly Devine, the Individual Giving Manager with Women Who Code. Thank you for joining today's session, Easily Apply Custom Designs to Multiple SwiftUI Projects. Please welcome our amazing speaker, Nguyen. Vui is a senior iOS engineer with a 20-plus year career spanning many technology stacks. She's also a tech leader, speaker, and mentor. As a lead for Women Who Code and a Women Tech Makers Ambassador, Vui's helping to build a world that she wants to live in, one where women experience gender parity in tech. When she's not coding, Vui enjoys fishing, eating, sleeping, and repeating, and glamping, and traveling to different places to go fishing. I love that glamping side of things. Thank you, Vui, for being here today. I will now pass the session over to you.
Thank you, Molly, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my talk. As Molly said, today I will discuss how you can easily apply custom designs to multiple SwiftUI projects. And my name is Nguyen. So before I dive into my talk and what it's about, let's discuss what problems we're trying to solve. So for example, I have my own freelancing company called Sunfish Empire. And I have a couple of personal apps in the market, but they don't share the same branding or theming. But what if I wanted them to? And what if I wanted it to make it easy to reuse design elements across the code base of all of my apps? And by the way, Sunfish Empire is named after sunfish, which is an actual fish, which you can see in that picture right there. So, for example, what if we want to display custom fonts in a project? So here's a sample project that I put together for this talk. The top line there is Apple's default system font in regular weight, and the bottom line shows my custom font in regular weight. But what if I want to display my custom font instead of the default Apple font in my apps? And what about displaying custom colors? So here's another example, also from my sample project. The top line displays Apple's version of the color teal, but I don't want my apps to show that. I want my apps to show my custom version of the color teal, like what you see in the bottom line. So how would I do that? What's one possible solution? Well, my talk, obviously. And as with software engineering, there are multiple ways to solve a problem. But since you're here, I'm assuming you're interested in hearing my solution. So let's dive in already. So what I'm going to cover today in my talk is I introduce the problem. I'm going to give a brief introduction of myself. I'll show a demo of the solution that I came up with. And I'll talk about how to set up your Swift package and project setup. Then I'll discuss how to create custom fonts that you can apply to text. Also custom colors that we can apply to text. Custom colors that can be applied to shapes. And finally, I will share resources, including the source code for my sample project at the end of the talk. And we'll also post a link to these slides at the end of my talk. So you can just listen and don't worry about writing a bunch of notes. So what's going to be covered? What's our use case? So we want to talk about how to apply custom fonts and colors to multiple iOS projects for consistent branding and theming. This solution also demonstrates how to create or extend view modifiers to take custom fonts and colors. And we want to match Apple's view modifier syntax whenever possible. So I came up with this solution while working on a project for a Fortune 50 company at my previous job. Now, while working on the sample project for this talk, of course, I had to take out the proprietary stuff. But this is why matching the Apple view modifier syntax is so important to make the library user-friendly for developers that are using it, which is very important if you're building a client-facing library. We also want to be able to achieve code reuse and modularity by using a Swift package. And I'm going to start by building a Swift package and my iOS project in tandem for simplicity. And this works only for SwiftUI views. So that means what's not covered is this is not a good solution for UIKit. We won't be able to do a deep dive into creating view modifiers. And we're not going to be building any custom components like buttons or controls or custom views, although you can, if you choose to, use my solution and build on top of that to create a custom component library if you want to. And I won't be able to go over accessibility and design or best design practices. I just won't have time to do justice to those topics, but there will be resources to those topics at the end of my talk. And I won't be going over how to pull your local Swift package into a standalone repo. But again, once you're done going through my talk, perhaps that's something you'd like to do for your own project. So now let me introduce myself. Again, I'm Nguyen. I'm a longtime software engineer, been working on software applications across many different tech stacks. Although I've been a mobile developer for over 10 years, both in native iOS and cross-platform. I like to share solutions to problems I've solved in the past. As mentioned earlier, this is a problem I've solved at my last job, and I haven't seen a solution like this anywhere else. So I thought other developers might find this helpful, which is why I'm sharing with you today. And I'm going to play a fun little game with you. I was interviewed for a speaker podcast for another conference that I recently spoke at, and we played 2 truths and a lie. So I thought it'd be fun to play that with you. I'm not going to reveal the answer until the end, so hopefully that will motivate you to stay until the end. Go ahead and take a look at this slide for some hints, though. So, which is the lie? I've caught a northern pike, which is a type of fish. I've caught a kokanee salmon, which is another type of fish. Or I've traveled to Beijing, China for an IoT hackathon. So stay tuned for the answer at the end. Now here's a demo of my sample project. I built a sample kitchen sink app to demo the different ways that you can use my design library. You can apply custom fonts and colors to text, both to the foreground color or to the background color. You can also apply custom colors to shapes in different ways. So now let's start by going over how to set up our Swift package and project workspace. Since we want to start by creating a local Swift package that you can build in tandem with your iOS project, you would do that by creating a directory within your iOS project workspace to hold your local Swift package. I called mine local packages, but you can call it whatever you like. Next, you want to go to Xcode, tap on File, New, and Package, and then place your Swift package in that new directory. And you want to make sure to add your Swift package to the same workspace as your iOS project. Next, you want to add your Swift package to your frameworks. You do that by selecting your workspace in the targets list, and then in the general window, tap on the plus sign under frameworks. Then select your Swift package in the frameworks window. If you do all this correctly, your Swift package should now appear in your list of frameworks. And then in order to test or run the correct Swift package or iOS project, make sure to create a separate scheme for each of them. Now, if you have your project set up correctly, you will see both your Swift package and your iOS project in the same project workspace, but they will live in their own space and they're not going to overlap each other. So to recap, In order to set up your Swift package and project, you want to start by adding the new Swift package in the same workspace as your iOS project to start. Make sure to add your Swift package to your frameworks. Create two schemas, one for your Swift package and one for your iOS project. And then check your project layout to make sure that the Swift package is inside the same workspace as your iOS project. Now that we've got our project set up, let's discuss how to create custom fonts that can be applied to text. As you can recall from the demo, we want to be able to display custom fonts like this. So you do that by first importing your Swift package into the file that you're going to use it in. This is where I add the code to display the two text boxes. And I also create a variable called font size so I can use it throughout this file. And here's how you use both the regular Apple system font and your custom Sunfish regular font. Notice how you use the same font modifier syntax to display both. Next, we'll dig into how this is done. So, for the actual SDK implementation, we're going to start by finding our fonts. I went to fontmirror.com and selected the Belota font. You'll want to look for a free license. For this project, I look for the font weights regular, light, and bold. And just a warning, if you use fonts that don't have a free license, they will not load an Xcode. You'll see Apple's standard font as a backup instead, and you won't know what's wrong. So just be aware of that. And non-free fonts that you've paid for might work. I just haven't tried that yet. So next, once you have your fonts, import those fonts into your Swift package. Make sure to place your font files under sources / your package name in your Swift package. This is important so that your Swift package can find your font files later. So next, add the path to your font files in your package.swift file. This doesn't have to be in its own subfolder fonts, but it must be in resources. This will enable your Swift package to find your resources, like your fonts, colors, etc., in your resources folder, including all subfolders of resources. Next, we want to load our fonts by registering them with the font manager before they can be used. So I do that by taking all the font names in the package bundle and registering them with the font manager. The Sunfish font name is an enum that I wrote to represent the file names of the fonts. I did this to avoid using string literals in the code. So the next step is to implement the custom.fontViewModifier method. Notice how the font view modifier method to add the custom font looks similar to the font view modifier method to use Apple system font. I'm going to go through each of the steps on how to do this in more detail over the next few slides. So the first step is we want to create a Sunfish font enum to represent our custom font. Sunfish font is an enum with associated values. Size for font size, and Sunfish font weight to represent font weight. This enum is what allows us to type .sunfish parens into the .font view modifier for the text box. Notice that when we call Sunfish font.name and the font weight is regular, it returns the regular version of the Sunfish font. Next, we extend font by overloading the font.custom function to take the Sunfish font. We do this by first loading the fonts before we can use them, and then once the fonts are loaded, we can call Apple's font.custom function, passing in our Sunfish font. Next, we create a view modifier to take in our overloaded font.custom function. Then extend view to take in our custom view modifier. This last step is what makes it possible to call a custom.fontView modifier. So, to recap, in order to create custom fonts that we can apply to text, we start by finding the fonts that we want to use, import those fonts into the Swift package, register our fonts before using them, and then implement the custom or new .fontView modifier. And again, if you see Apple system fonts instead of your custom fonts, review the last few slides to see if you missed anything. Next, we'll discuss how to create custom colors that we can apply to text. As you recall from the demo, we want to be able to display custom colors on text like you see here. And once again, you start by importing the Swift package that you want to use. And this is where I add the code to display the two different text boxes that you see. And again, I create a variable called font size so I can use it throughout this view. And here is how you display text in both the regular apple teal color and the custom sunfish teal color. Notice how you use the same foreground color view modifier to display both. Next, I will explain how this is done. So first we start by creating or finding the colors and importing them into our Swift package. This is one way we can do this. I'm going to go through each of these steps in more detail in the next few slides. First, we want to find an image with the colors that we want. I chose a drawing of a pumpkin seed sunfish to represent the colors of my company's brand. Next, we want to add the assets catalog to the Swift package and place this under the resources folder of the Swift package. Again, this is important since we made resources a directory in the Swift package earlier for the Swift package to be able to find our assets. Next, we want to add a color in the assets catalog. It can be any color, don't worry, this will change later. Once you add the color, then tap on the color, then tap on the Show Color panel while in the Attributes Inspector. And notice the dropper in the color panel, which we will use in the next slide. So now we want to use the dropper in the Xcode color panel and tap on a spot in the image to update the color in the assets file. You can make the dark version of your color the same as any appearance, or it can be different depending on your company's branding for light or dark themes. So notice how the foreground color view modifier to display the custom color looks similar to the foreground color view modifier that uses Apple's color. In this case, we only need to extend the existing Apple modifier to take in our custom color this time. I will go through each of these steps to extend the foreground color view modifier in more detail over the next few slides. So first, we create a sunfish color enum to represent our custom colors. This represents the colors created in the assets catalog. Next, we extend color to initialize color from sunfish color. And we use a sunfish color enum to point to the custom color that we created in the assets catalog. Next, we want to extend shape style to use the custom color initializer. A color like a sunfish color is a concrete type of the shape style protocol. This means you don't use shape style directly. Instead, you extend shape style so you can use one of its concrete types, like sunfish color, later. Because this means that by extending shape style to include sunfish color, then any existing view modifiers that take a shape style can now take the sunfish color. So this means that now foreground color can take the shape style of type sunfish color. Now let's move on to background color. Notice Apple's version of the color pink. It looks more magenta in my opinion. So I want to use my version of the color pink, which you see in the bottom line. Once again, you'll want to import your Swift package into the file that you're going to use. And again, I set font size so I can reuse it throughout this file. Now, we've already gone over how to implement the font view modifier. But see once again how the background view modifier looks the same for both displaying Apple's pink as well as our custom sunfish pink. How do we do this? Well, guess what? The code's already been done. Puppies are very excited about this, believe me. So as I said before, all the steps we need to take have already been done. So in order to extend our background view modifier method, we need to create the sunfish color enum. We need to extend color to initialize color from sunfish color. We need to extend shape style to use our custom color initializer. And since the background view modifier takes a shape style and we've already extended shape style, the code to extend background to take in our custom color has already been done. So this means now that the background view modifier can display our sunfish color. So to recap, in order to create custom colors that we can apply to text, we first start by creating or finding our custom colors. We import our custom colors into our Swift package. We extend shape style to include the custom colors. This means we can easily extend existing Apple view modifiers to take custom colors using extended shape style. This process works for foreground color and background. Now we'll move on to our final segment, which is creating custom colors that we can apply to shapes. Here we want to draw a rectangle and fill it with our custom teal color. See how we use the Apple fill modifier syntax, but we are passing in our custom color, not the standard Apple teal color. And once again, all the steps we need to take have already been done. To extend the fill view modifier method, we've created a sunfish color enum to represent our custom color. We've extended color to initialize color from sunfish color. We've extended shape style to use our custom color initializer. And since the fill view modifier takes a shape style, and we've already extended shape style, the code to extend fill to take in our custom color has already been done. Now we can fill the rectangle with our custom sunfish teal color. Next, let's fill a circle with a custom color and draw a border around the circle with another custom color. In this case, we need to create a completely new modifier instead of overloading or extending an existing Apple view modifier. That's because there is no way to natively fill and draw a stroke border around a shape at the same time. So we're building that ourselves to use our custom colors. Since we are implementing a completely new view modifier, most of the steps have been done except for the last one. So to implement a custom fill view modifier method, we need to create a sunfish color enum. We need to extend color to initialize color. we need to extend shape style to use our custom color initializer. But now we need to do this last step. We need to extend the shape class by creating a custom fill method that can take a shape style of type sunfish color. I'll go into more detail on this last step in the next slide. So we need to extend the shape class by creating a custom fill method that can take shape style of type sunfish color. Now, under the hood of our custom fill method, we're actually calling Apple's stroke and background view modifier methods. Since those methods take in a shape style, and we've already extended shape style to include sunfish color, we can now call our custom fill view modifier and pass in our custom sunfish pink to fill the circle and the custom sunfish brown to draw the circle's border. Now onto our final example. We want to draw an ellipse with the border in our custom sunfish blue and the background of our shapes view in sunfish yellow. Here we are calling individually Apple stroke border and background view modifier methods, but passing in our custom sunfish colors. And once again, all the steps we need to take have already been done. So to extend the stroke border and background view modifier methods, we created sunfish color enum. We've extended color to initialize color from sunfish color. We extended the shape style to use custom color initializer. And therefore, the code to extend stroke border and background to take in our custom color has already been done. So to recap, in order to create custom colors that we can apply to shapes, we first need to create or find our custom colors, import those colors into the Swift package. This makes it, and then we can easily extend existing Apple View modifiers to take custom colors by extending shape style. This process works for the fill method, the stroke border method, and the background method. We can also implement a custom or new view modifier that can take custom colors through the extended shape style. This makes it possible for us to implement the custom fill method that will also draw a stroke border around our shape. All right, we went through a lot of material for this talk, so now it's time for me to share some of the resources. Here's a couple of links to help you get started on creating Swift packages. And I spent a lot of time talking about view modifiers. So here's a few resources. One is a really great Code Echo article written by Daniela, who is an active member of the Women Who Code mobile track community. There's another great Hacking with Swift article written by Paul Hudson, who those of you in iOS know is a well-known expert in the iOS community. And I also listed a couple of Apple's guides on view modifiers. And now I want to share some resources on design best practices and accessibility. I'd like to give a shout out to Susanna, who is an active member of the Women Who Code mobile track community, for not only sharing these resources with me, but she's also given me good feedback and helped me with reviewing my slides for my talk as well. And here is the link for the code to my sample project. I'll give folks just a moment if anyone wants to take a picture of that, but I'll also be sharing a link to these slides at the end. Okay, so to the moment that we're waiting for, the game, 2 truths and a lie. I will finally reveal the answer to you. So which one is a lie? I've caught a northern pike. Or I've caught a kokanee salmon. Or I've traveled to Beijing, China for an IoT hackathon. Now, if you can take a look at the slide, you can see that that's a picture of me holding a baby northern pike. And when I caught that at the time, the rules of the reservoir was that we could not return any northern pike to the water alive because they were eating all the trout. So that was the rule at the time. I caught a coho salmon before, but not a kokanee. That's why there's no picture of that. And the bottom picture there is me with my team in front of the Great Wall of China. So I have traveled to Beijing, China for an IoT hackathon. All right, and here we are at the end. Again, I'm Nguyen. Here's a link to my project GitHub. You may follow me on Twitter at Sunfish Girl. There's my link tree with links to my website and my LinkedIn profile if you'd like to follow me there. And you can also email me with any questions. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Vui, for presenting on custom designs to multiple Swift UI projects. Your talk was so informative, and obviously we all really appreciated kind of you running through the steps of creating a custom design. If you have any questions for Vui, please add them to the chat. And while everyone is sharing their questions, Vui, could you share with me recommendations or resources for beginners that are looking to start working in SwiftUI projects?
Let's see. Well, if you want to learn about SwiftUI or Swift or iOS development, Hacking with Swift is a great resource, and there's a lot of free tutorials on there.
Awesome. Thank you. What got you interested in kind of working in this way to begin with?
You mean creating modules for things?
Or custom designs?
Sure. Well, it's not so much the design part that interested me, but just making code more modular, because they say things like don't repeat yourself, and if you make code modular, that's a better practice. It turns out that when I was working on this problem at my last job, I was actually solving two problems. But the first problem was that we were trying to keep the design code, like the fonts, the colors, and so forth, separate from the main project, just to make the project more modular. And so when I figured out how to do that, I was asked to kind of give a preview of this talk to another project for the same client company that I was working at. And they were really impressed with that because, they were building multiple apps that they wanted to brand with their company logos and colors and so forth. And they really liked my solution because now they can apply that same theming to all of their apps and maintain their branding without, the challenge of copying and pasting code everywhere. Because as you know, when you do that, if you have to change code in one place, then you have to change it everywhere. And then there's just the greater chance that you can introduce bugs, right? So the idea of creating modules that you can just drop into multiple projects is very handy and very useful.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I wouldn't have had to worry about bugs, but my first job was working as a graphic designer. And, in some of the same ways, a lot of people would ask for changes and you would think, oh, it's just like one little change, but right, it changes sometimes the whole project.
Mm-hmm.
In that situation, and people are like, oh, it'll just take you a minute, and you're like, no, this isn't a minute fix. So I could see how being able to create more modules associated with it does prevent it from kind of creating a much larger kind of issue if you do have to make a slight change, or what someone would infer as a slight change.
Right, exactly.
What if someone was looking to get into careers working kind of in a more module coding sense? What would they be looking for, or maybe some job titles that might pop out at them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've I've been seeing a few job titles out there for like SDK engineer. So you know the whole idea is usually in terms of some company wants to build an SDK that can be used in, say, Android apps and iOS apps and web and so forth, right? Like if you're interested in doing something like that, like building a piece of code that can be applied to a lot of different places, right? So I've seen like SDK engineer as one possible job title for something like that.
Sure. One of the audience members, Samantha, asked, do you think it's worth it to specialize in iOS development or to stay as a generalist using tools like React Native or multi-platform?
So this is kind of a tricky question. Well, maybe not tricky. I have to answer it very carefully because I've actually done cross-platform development before I transitioned to native iOS. And I would not say that specializing in one or doing multi platform, I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. It's just a matter of what direction do you want your career to go, right? So I used to develop, like I said, cross-platform mobile apps using Titanium, which I have to tell people that came before React Native, came before Flutter, not because very few people know what that is. And I was very good at it. It's JavaScript based. But at the time, and I don't know if I was like before my time or companies weren't ready, but back then, companies that wanted mobile developers, they usually preferred native mobile developers. And so back then when I was working in Titanium, a lot of the work that I did was in freelancing and small projects for like entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. It was very difficult for me to find work in full-time in native or mobile development until I switched to native. So I don't want that to like scare anybody, but that's just something to keep in mind is that there seems to be, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but there seems to be like a line between like the native mobile communities and the cross-platform communities, and like once you go into cross-platform, there can be a bias to trying to find work as a native mobile developer. So I don't know if that was a good answer. Probably terrible.
I'm guessing that she thought it was a great answer because she put 3 shocked faces in a row. So I think it was probably really helpful. Claudia also asked, did you encounter any different problems that Swift packages also solved?
I haven't, to be honest, I haven't worked in a lot of module development. I've done a little bit with like Carthage and CocoaPods, but the biggest thing amongst those module package providers, however you want to call it, is Swift packages has been the easiest to work with. So, and sorry for those of you that are Carthage and CocoaPods fans, but Hey, you want my opinion, so I'm going to give it.
Yeah, hey, you can't complain when you ask, right?
Right.
And I want to give a big thank you to you, Vui, for your time today and the insight that you were able to share and examples you were able to share.
Well, thank you so much, Molly, for moderating my talk, and thank you for everyone for coming. And I hope you all learned something.
Absolutely.